Welcome back to Prosperity Playbook. You've got Renee, Courtney, and Britt here today. We're going to talk a little bit about high school sports and just school sports in general for kids. And I'm going to start by telling you that this is actually how Britt and I met each other originally. She was my daughter's high school volleyball coach her freshman year. So it's kind of weird how this has turned into us being besties. But yeah, that's kind of how it all started. And so we both have very different opinions. I have a daughter who she did 9 years of all-star cheer, and then we had a volleyball phase, and now we just switched to a new sport of golf her senior year. And Britt has the coaching side of things. So I think this will be an interesting discussion around, what parents need to watch out for and kind of the good and the bad, the ugly.
And I'm kind of the outsider on this conversation. Renee just asked me if I played sports growing up, and I let her know I was not allowed to. I got to choose from dance or piano. So sports does look a lot different today than it did when we were kids, or even I'm the older one in this group, when my son was in high school.
If I couldn't have played sports as a kid, I think I would have become emancipated. I would not have been a nice child to be in the house if I didn't get all my energy out playing volleyball.
I did get to ride horses in college.
There you go.
Yeah, loved it.
I think that is a good point, though, is that I think for a lot of kids, it's an exercise outlet. It's a movement outlet. It gets the crazies out a little bit, was what my grandma used to say. Go outside and get your crazies out. I was never a big athlete. I'm sure this will surprise nobody that knows me. I played a little bit of volleyball like in junior high or whatever, but I was a farm kid. I did 4-H. I showed cows. Like I rode horses. That was kind of my quote unquote sport. So having a high school athlete was a very different thing for me. Also being a cheer mom. When my daughter came to me when she was 5 and wanted to go as a guest to the cheer gym, I was kind of like, right, sure you are. And we had just had this whole gymnastics thing. So like in Bozeman, everybody seems to do gymnastics when they're little, and they start them when they're like 2, as soon as they're potty trained, actually. That was how old they had to be. And then one day she just refused to come out of the locker room. We just bought this fancy new little leotard, all sparkly, and she refused. Like she absolutely refused. And then the second week in a row that she did that, I was like, I'm done. I'm not coming here and doing this and fighting with you every week. So I was like, okay, last chance. Like, if you don't go out now, like, we're done. And she was done. And so then a couple months later, when she said she wanted to go as a guest to the cheer gym, I thought, okay, you get one shot. And it's literally what I told her. I'm like, I'm not going to go through that again, where I'm trying to drag you out of the bathroom. And it ended up being something she fell in love with. And we did it for 9 years. And it was an amazing thing. But what I will say is it's very hardcore. It was super expensive. It was easily a 5-figure-a-year sport. And it's year-round. And it's a perfection sport. And if you screw up one little thing, you've just lost the competition for your entire team. And that's a really hard thing as a mom to be able to figure out. Like, how do you talk to your daughter about this, and how, like, you don't have to be perfect, but you do in cheer.
Right.
And, they were 8th in the world at one point. They had a lot of success and a lot of fun.
8th in the world?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. It was pretty
From
crazy.
little Montana.
I know. It was crazy. In fact, when the announcer, this was in Florida, and the announcer was like, motion athletics from Bozeman, Montana.
Love that.
For real, it was a very unique thing. And now Billings has a gym that actually just crushed it at nationals last year. So it's an up and coming sport, but cheer's not the only thing that's expensive and crazy.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point. When you start at 5 years old in anything, like I did gymnastics when I was a teeny tiny baby, and then I grew really quickly and couldn't do a back bend anymore. And they were like, I don't think this is your sport anymore. But something that is really interesting nowadays is coaching camps. We would have like first graders, kindergarteners that were wanting to come play volleyball. And we have these little volleyballs that are lighter than a traditional volleyball, but it still is going to like snap their arms in half if they try to play with that ball. And so we would play with balloons, and we would put little dots on the floor to try to teach them footwork. But I'm like, okay, introduce them to the game when they're young. Sure, have them watch volleyball because it's so fun. But when when your parent wants you to play a sport so badly that they specialize you so young and that is the only sport that you play, and you all of a sudden are signing up to play club when you're a teeny tiny baby, and then you're enlisting and playing on the school team when you're going into middle school, and then you play club and then you play school ball, and it's like that's all you do. I really think that it holds you at a disadvantage, both developmentally, and you can get overuse injuries and you can get burnout. And if you haven't been given the opportunity to explore other sports and other summer activities and horseback riding and all of these other things that you could be doing, but instead you're just playing the same sport all year round, starting when you're still just a kid, I think you really lose out on a lot of your childhood. And today, sports are so competitive that I think parents worry if their kids don't specialize at a young age that they're not going to go on to play at a high level. And I don't know, I think it's doing them a disadvantage.
My husband dealt with that in Minnesota growing up in a hockey area. So he started out when he was knee high to a grasshopper, he said.
Cute.
Yeah, I do think you're right, though. I think if they don't get started early, like if a girl wanted to go and try out for volleyball her freshman year and she'd never played before, probably not going to happen. It's so crazy competitive anymore. And volleyball might not be a great example because it is so competitive. There's so many people, because like you said, it's so fun that everybody wants to play it. But I think you're right. I think they do sometimes miss out on childhood. So my daughter did all-star cheer through her freshman year. So her freshman year, she actually did volleyball, made the sophomore team her volleyball her freshman year, and then also did cheer, which was crazy to try to do two sports at once. And then she started having some back issues, so she quit cheer, wasn't going to do it her sophomore year, and then didn't make the volleyball team. And so she went from a two-sport athlete to a no-sport athlete overnight. And we can talk about that more in a little bit, but like talk about taking away your identity. And she ended up coaching cheer for the year, which I think was a good transition. But that was who she was. She was a cheerleader and then she wasn't. She was a volleyball player and then she wasn't. But the unintended thing out of that, her junior year, she worked, but she didn't coach. She wasn't in a sport, and she had so much fun. She went to the games. She'd never gone to go to the football games before because she was always gone for cheer, had practice. She went to the other volleyball games. She got to participate in dressing up for the theme nights. Like, she actually got to be a kid for the first time her junior year of high school, and she loved it.
I just let my son try out different sports. So he was super tall. He's 6'3", and everybody thought he should play basketball, and he hates basketball. So he tried football and he tried soccer. He did not like them, and he finally landed with lacrosse and stuck with that and loved it.
Love that. Well, and that's what I was just going to say about Lexi too, is she is now playing golf, and that's a sport she gets to play for the rest of her life. Right. That's something that is going to benefit her forever. And so I love just being able to have the option to try things. Yeah.
Yes, she said, tell your friends that we're going to all go. She said, get a tea time and I'll teach them all the golf. So
yeah.
the pod gals, she said.
Something that I want to talk about, being a coach, we have to make really hard decisions. I know that not all places are like this. In Bozeman, we have a really highly competitive sports environment because we're rapidly growing and we don't necessarily have the infrastructure to keep up with it. And so the amount of kids that are trying out for these high school teams, I mean, if they were playing at a slightly lower level school, that athlete would be an all-around star athlete. But because there's so many great athletes that are trying out for so few spots at these schools, there's a lot of awesome kids that are getting cut from these teams. Mm-hmm. And so it makes it a really hard environment when if those kids do want to continue playing that sport, then they do have to go play club or they have to go seek out different ways of playing the sport. And club around here, I mean, it can be thousands of dollars just to be on the team. That doesn't include your knee pads and your shoes and your warm-ups and your travel. And if you want to go see your kids play, you're driving or flying to all of these tournament locations and then getting a hotel room. I mean, it can easily be $10,000 just for one season of volleyball. Totally.
My son used to sleep in the car so that when I started the car at 5 a.m., he did not have to be up and ready to go. He was going to sleep till we got all the way to Cody, Wyoming, or Kalispell or Jackson Hole. So that's another issue here with sports, too, is we don't have a lot of competition nearby
close to us, yeah.
to have a game with. So some of the teams have to play each other multiple times, or you have to go quite a distance.
I remember when I talked to a gal that grew up around New York, and she said that their longest bus ride was 2 hours, and she was just like complaining about it. And I was like, we don't even have a bus ride that's 2 hours. Our shortest bus ride when I was in high school was 4 hours.
Yeah, and a lot of them are 6.
It's crazy.
8.
Yeah, it is a really crazy thing to think about. And the lack of sleep becomes an issue. I think, talking about your son sleeping in the car is a thing. But gym space, as you mentioned, our infrastructure is not keeping up. So we're kind of short on schools. Our schools are a little bit overcrowded. And you have all these different sports teams and all these different club teams, and they can't even find gym space. So you've got teams that are practicing at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. And some of these are pretty young kids. And I'm like, I remember... I can't even remember now if it was volleyball or cheer. Actually, I think it was volleyball when she was in junior high. And she had like an 8:30 practice. And I was like, her bedtime is 9 o'clock. I just didn't know how to do the sports mom thing. And so I do think that it's very easy to sacrifice school and sacrifice homework and sacrifice sleep and friends and family time and try to figure out when you're going to have family dinner when you're doing 2 sports at a time. And you're doing practices back to back. You're like, here's a protein bar.
Not to mention the cost of it, too.
Totally.
When I was hired at the high school here, I had coached club for years and years and years, but club, you have practice 2 nights a week, and then you have tournaments on a lot of weekends, but that's it. You know the whole schedule up front going into the season. And I grew up in Wyoming. I didn't grow up in Montana, and so the way that the sports are set up here is just a little bit different. So I got hired at the high school, and like day 2 after I got hired, I started receiving a bunch of emails from parents asking, when is your camp? Are you still putting on a camp this year? And, what are the tryout dates going to be? And how many practices do we have to have before tryouts? And I mean, I just started getting inundated with all of these additional things that I didn't know we had to do as the high school program. And so I went and talked to our administrator, and it's really interesting how many rules and expectations are passed down from just like the governing body that is, where basically each athlete has to have so many practices in before their first game. But the way that it's set up is that we have a date set for us on what the first day of tryouts can be. And then they basically add it so that as long as you do 2-a-days between the day that tryout starts and the day of your first game, then you're good where everybody can play. But what if somebody had a family vacation set? Or what if a kid gets sick in the first couple of weeks of
Mine
practice?
always got sick right during tryouts.
And that's very common because all of a sudden you go from having your fun summer to like, boom, 2-a-days, you're waking up early, you're getting no sleep, you're working out really hard. And so it was just really interesting and kind of frustrating as a coach because I felt like we're not allowing the kids to be kids anymore. It's really like you're treating them like they're a D1 athlete when they're really just kids, and you have these really high expectations. They have to go to the team workouts. They have to go to the morning practices. They have to go to the team bondings. They have to go to the evening practices. They have to keep up on school.
Don't forget fundraisers.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like, boom, go, go, go. It's crazy.
Sounds stressful.
It was.
Stressful.
It was.
I think it's stressful on both sides, and I want to talk about that a little bit because I do think tryouts is extremely stressful for everybody. And I want to talk about the fact that I feel like a lot of kids, their identity is tied to sports. And so for Lexi, like her first year as a freshman, we didn't know if she was going to make a team or not. I had no idea what the other girls were going to be like. And then she ended up making this sophomore team, and that was great. And by the way, I did have a family vacation scheduled because I didn't know. I had no idea this was going to be a thing. And I was like, okay, practices start tomorrow. We're going to miss the first 3 practices. I'm sorry. Because I just didn't know. But it was such a cool thing for her. And then her sophomore year to come in and then not make the team. And she was like, wait, I made the sophomore team as a freshman and now I don't make it as a sophomore. Like, did I get worse? And it was honestly like a really awful moment for both of us. Like, she came out of tryouts the last day thinking she was good to go, handed me her envelope, and I opened the envelope and it said she didn't make the team. And I like froze and I was like, oh my God, what do I even say right now? And I just shook my head and she was like, are you for real? And we both just sat in the truck and cried because we didn't know what else to do. And, I'm like always, okay, we're good. Like, somebody else outworked you and it's fine and everything's meant to be. And she's like, Mom, I don't want to hear any of that right now. So from a coach's perspective, I am sure it's even more hell for you.
Horrible. Absolutely horrible. The way that I basically tried every way that you could make cuts possible. We did it just in person, face to face. But as soon as you say whether or not they made the team, they don't hear a single other word that you say. So we didn't do that because I think it was way more stressful for everybody involved. I did still do face to face with any of my seniors that got cut because, they'd been there for 4 years and we had such a different relationship. But we also tried like posting the numbers, but then you have to feel your feels in front of all of your peers. And I absolutely hate that. And we ended up settling on giving numbers or like giving letters. When they leave the gym, they received a letter in an envelope and we asked them to not open it until they got home so that they could feel whatever feels they were feeling in peace and in their own space. And it was so hard because you're evaluating athletes only based on what you know. And so like we had a couple athletes that would show up that maybe they just moved to town a week before tryouts, but all of their peers had been coming to all of the open gyms and all of the camps and doing all the things all summer. Maybe somebody has a low income family and they have to work all summer long in order to earn an income to have any spending money. And so they can't be coming to the open gyms. It's so unfair that gives a disservice to that kid. But it does, because when you have 85 athletes coming to tryouts and you have to cut that down to 40 in 3 days, I mean, you only get to judge them based on what you see in the gym.
And the more affluent kids get to go to specialty camps in the summer or have a coach on their own, private trainer.
Right.
Yeah, it's difficult.
It is difficult. I will tell you, the golf coaches have it the easiest because it is like everybody goes and golfs 18 holes and whoever has the lowest scores, you made the team. Top 10, you're in. There's like no room for choosing or favoritism or anything. It's like, that's your score. You either made it or you don't. So they have it easy.
I'm jealous. It was rough. Every year I would go home and just sob after tryouts. Sure. Every year. It was horrible.
Well, then it's probably hard on the kids too when they get their envelopes and then they're calling each other to find out who made it and who didn't. And so you got to go through it regardless.
Right. And you're afraid to like, who do I ask them if they made it? What if they did? What if they didn't? And it becomes like this whole rumor mill of who made what. And it is super hard. It would be nice if there's a way to like, everybody gets their envelope, but then like 30 minutes later, the list is just posted to the Instagram page or something so that the awkward combos can be a little bit avoided. I don't know. But it is a hard thing. So what advice do you have for parents who are in that situation with the kid who didn't make a team?
I mean, I think it's really important to separate the child from the athlete. You know, when it comes down to it, your kid is a person first, and let them feel their feels and just let them know that you love them, you support them. And then you're going to have failures throughout your life. You know, we are all going to have jobs that we apply for that we don't get, or relationships that don't work out, or whatever it is. So I think a really big lesson is to normalize failure. You know, sports are a really safe space to learn life lessons about losing, and whether that's getting cut or getting benched or losing a match or not getting the stats you wanted or whatever it is, but normalize failure. Don't try to shield them from that.
And how to feel about the ones that made the team.
Right. Not turning against the teammates that made it. Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good point. And I think normalizing failure is huge. I mean, that's a good piece of advice for just life in general. I do feel like we all want to show our highlight reel, and we have to show the things that we don't succeed at either. I think I've said this before, but Sarah Blakely, who I'm obsessed with, she's the founder of Spanx. Her dad used to ask them at dinner every night, "What did you fail at today?" And I love the idea of that, because if you didn't fail at something, it meant you weren't trying hard enough. You weren't trying enough new things. And I mean, something every day is a little bit like, it's a little extra, but I love the idea of normalizing failure in that you're trying something new. And when Lexi went to try out for the golf team this year, I was so proud of her for trying something new her senior year and trying out for a varsity sport. By the way, the girl has been golfing a freaking year total of her entire life. She didn't grow up on a golf course. This was like, a terrifying thing for me. And I was like so prepared to be like, okay, what are we going to do if she doesn't make it? So how do you go into the tryouts with your child? Like, you've got this, you're going to make it. Or like, I don't really care if you make it or not. And that's what I would say. I was like, I don't really Like, I'm going to love you no matter what. And I just think you're awesome. And she's like,
And
Mom.
she's so cute.
Well, first of all, that shows you how much resilience she has. You know, like the fact that she was willing to put herself in that position again is she clearly has developed so much like self-love and self-worth and resilience,
Character.
which is amazing. That's, I mean, to me, that's what sports is all about. But I would say focus on effort instead of outcome. And that can be tryouts or literally every single game or match or whatever the sport is that they're playing. But you, at the end of the day, you can't control whether or not you make the team. You can't control the coach's decision. You can't control the win or the loss. But you can control your hustle, your work ethic, your attitude, if you show up on time, your grit, and you can determine how you bounce back when things don't go your way. So I think really just like love your kiddo for the effort that they are putting in. Celebrate them putting themselves out of their comfort zone, doing the hard thing, showing up to tryouts and being willing to fail.
I love that. I think that's excellent advice. Thank you for that. I can tell you, so as a golf mom this year, which is really the weirdest spectator sport ever, by the way. My husband and I went to divisionals last week with her. We watched 14 miles between the 2 days as spectators. Like, it's so weird. And also, it's the most dangerous spectator sport because there were balls flying in our head all the time. But what I really saw was her cheering on the other kids, her encouraging them. If they didn't have a good shot, she was like, "You got this. It's okay. You're fine, or that'll play." And that I honestly didn't give a shit how she played. I was
love
so
that about her.
proud of watching her cheer these other kids on. I really, truly wouldn't have even cared. I
And
wouldn't have cared.
she calls them out too when they're not playing legally.
That's true.
So one of the biggest pieces of advice that I have always given to the parents of everyone I've coached is after a game, after a match, in the car ride home, don't focus on what went well, what didn't go well. Don't analyze how the game went. Tell them, I love watching you play.
Love that.
And just show them support for a couple of reasons. Because one, I'm sure that they just had a long after match discussion with the coach in the locker room and they already talked about what went well and what didn't. I'm sure throughout the game, their coach was, giving them things to work on or frustrations or whatever. And I'm sure that they are beating themselves up more than anybody else will. I know that myself as an athlete, every time that I was leaving a match, I'm replaying everything in my head and beating myself up for, I should have done this. I could have done that. So if you then, as the parent, are also doing that, it's so easy for that athlete to just, even if they had a great game, to all of a sudden only be focusing on, I need to do all of these things better. So just as the parent, that is my number one piece of advice.
And
I love
sometimes
watching you play.
Kids need a little quiet time after.
Totally. Absolutely.
Or they might play a position where they're not a scoring player and you're just a support player.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that piece of it of being the coach, because I have to assume that being a coach, the worst part of that is the parents. So talk to me about that and how to be a good parent towards your kid. Like if your kid comes home and says, the coach didn't play me, or the coach did this, or the coach did that, what's your best advice to a parent on how do you deal with that?
That's a great question. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. First of all, sometimes there are shit coaches. I'm just going to put that out there.
That's a valid point.
Sometimes coaches
do
show
they do
a lot
it?
of favoritism, and sometimes they are mean and belittling. And that sometimes you have to stand up to your kid and be like, you are being a horrible person. And not to your kid, sorry, to the coach, and let them know, like, there is a boundary here that you are crossing. But, I think that happens a lot of the time because sometimes you can be a really great athlete and miss the game. And so you become a coach, and not all athletes make great coaches. So unfortunately that happens a lot.
That's a good point.
On the other end of it, lead with curiosity. I have been really lucky where really I haven't had very many parent issues in my entire coaching career because
The parents love you.
It's because you're a good coach.
I think it's because I'm a good communicator.
Yeah.
because I lead with curiosity. I set the expectations very clearly, and I encourage the parents to lead with curiosity, and I establish really good boundaries. So there should be a chain of command where I would say, if your kiddo is coming to you and complaining and complaining and complaining, ask them if they have asked to have a meeting with the coach themselves, because your kiddo should be the number one advocate for themselves. And I love when a kid comes to me and advocates for themselves. And, you know, like for example, I had a gal that was coming to me. She was a middle. So if you don't know much about volleyball, typically your middles are your blockers. And so they will have a player that plays back row for them. And one of the biggest reasons that you do that is because your blockers are constantly going all the way from pin to pin. They jump the most of anybody on the team. So if they're playing a full 6 rotation, they are going to be gassed by the end of the match. So typically you have a libero that goes in for both of your middle blockers. But I had a middle blocker that came to me and was really wanting to be given the option to play in the back row, or at least to serve. And had she not had that conversation with me, I would have kept doing what I was doing. But what I realized is my middles weren't getting any back row time in practice, because I had so many people on my team that I would just immediately put in a back row sub for them, that they didn't even get to try being in the back row. And she made me completely change my practice strategy just by advocating for herself and leading with curiosity and asking.
Oh my gosh. I just have to tell you that the fact that you explained that is huge, because I can tell you, as a kid who had a front row, or as a parent of a kid that was front row in club sport, they would take her out before serving every time, and she would get so frustrated. She's like, I serve out the entire time when I'm serving. Why does she always take me out? And I will guarantee you the coach never told her that, because she had no idea why she would be taken out when she got to the back row. Yeah. You see, this is why you're such a good communicator.
Communication is so important. Exactly. Well, and then I think there's also, you know, if it goes past that, if the kid doesn't get anything out of the conversation, if the coach is just not willing to give them any feedback, if they're just like, I don't try harder, like that's not helpful. At that point, I would absolutely ask, as the parent, I would ask to have a meeting with the coach. And I recommend having your kid come to that meeting if the coach doesn't automatically establish that, because it's going to be your kid versus the coach. It's going to be word against word always. But if you can kind of help navigate that conflict with your kid, you can teach them how to have healthy conflict. You can, if the coach asks a question, you know, feel free to try to direct that to have your child answer it instead of speaking for them. We're trying to teach our kids how to deal with conflict and how to be resilient and how to be advocates for themselves. And what better way than to be in that conversation with them?
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I loved how you said that they should start with a meeting first, because I think parents want to jump in there and like save their kids and help their kids and do everything for them. And I think that's such a disservice. I think kids need to learn how to deal with conflict. They need to learn how to deal with authority in a respectful manner and solve some of their own issues, because they're going to have to do it at some point.
Yeah. And something that I want to point out too, this is something that unfortunately I have had to deal with on a few different occasions. Sometimes as a parent, you have to pay attention to your own identity. Are you getting so tied up in the pride of your child's athletic success? Are you getting so tied up in their achievements on the field or on the court being the number one most important thing that you're forgetting what really matters and why they're really in the sport to begin with? Because I have had several conversations with parents where they're like so adamant about their kid playing a specific position or playing all the way around or whatever it is. But when I talk to the kid, that it isn't at all what the kid wants. So sometimes as a parent, you have to do a little ego check at the door. Like, okay, I am here to support my child. I'm not reliving my athletic dreams through my child right now. And make sure you're having those conversations with your kid and giving them a safe space to actually tell you what they want. If your goal is you're going to go be a D1 athlete and you're going to play at this school because that's the school that I played at, have you asked them if that's what they want before setting that precedent? Because if not, there is a serious conflict there, because it's not about you.
Yeah. We were just talking about that. Lexi and I were talking about that the other day. I've always said that I felt like Lexi was a little bit at a sports disadvantage because she didn't have crazy sports parents. Like I wasn't a sports kid. My husband played sports, but that was because he went to a school that was, he had 6 kids in his class and you had to play sports or they didn't have teams. So he was no super athlete.
You will play and you will like it.
You will play, exactly. So I don't have that like super competitive drive around sports to like be the best and pushing you and like get your butt out into the yard and go hit the ball. And I didn't really have that. And I think a lot of parents do. And you see a lot of these kids that are the elite athletes have those parents that are pushing super hard. And I think that's a scary place to be sometimes, because sometimes I think they push too hard and they're living vicariously through their kids. And I was talking to Lexi about that and she's like, what does that mean? I said, they're living out their dream through the kid. Like they're making the kid accomplish the dreams that they maybe didn't get to.
Mm-hmm. It's very easy to think that that is you supporting your athlete and pushing them to be the best that they can be. But notice that I just said athlete and not child, right? Like I said at the beginning of the episode, like make sure that you're really separating the child from the athlete. Make sure that they are still a person first, and you are supporting the whole person. You're supporting their mental health and their well-being before you're just supporting going out and getting extra reps in and getting the practices in. And I think a big piece of this is pay attention to their body language when they're playing the game. Are they still smiling when they're out on the court? Are they still getting excited and getting themselves up early to go to practice? Are they still talking to their teammates, inviting teammates over? If they're not doing those things, that's a huge sign that something needs to change, that they are burnt out and they are not in the place that they should be mentally. So make sure you're kind of checking in with them periodically and checking into their body language, because sometimes even if they're not saying the words, their body will tell you if they are not where they're supposed to be.
That's a great point. And I think while we're talking about their bodies, it's also very common for a lot of kids to end up with injuries. And I think it's this go, go, go. We're not focusing on nutrition. We're not focusing on sleep. We're not focusing as much as we should maybe on stretching and things like that. And I definitely saw that in the cheer world. Like the things that their little bodies could do was unbelievable. But you go watch a practice and the warm up was short, and it was, and to nobody's fault. Like there's only so much gym space. There's only so many things you can do. But like some of the things that they had to do, that they had expectations for the amount of sit-ups or push-ups or how long their plank was or the amount of lemon squeezes or whatever it is, like it's a crazy amount, and there's no individual attention there. So if you're not doing it with the right form and it's all about just how many reps can you do, then guess what? You get back issues. Instead of building your core strength, you're taking it all on your back and you're going to have problems. And so I think it's really important to have your kids listen to their bodies and know when they need a rest. And I think some of these year-round sports, I think you need rest. I think that's just as important. If you are somebody that's hardcore and working out all the time, I think rest days matter too. Your body needs that time to heal. I mean, I'm pretending I know this because I'm not an athlete.
No, you're 100% correct. Absolutely.
The other part with having a boy instead of a girl, my son was growing so fast. He grew up to 6'3", 6'4", and he had growth plate issues in his feet. I'd never even heard of that.
Sure.
I was dealing with the same thing, and then there's this thing called Osgood-Schlatters, which is basically your knees hurt all the time from growing too fast. And yeah, it's a real thing. I mean, it's really interesting hearing, it's just like go, 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 go all the time and pushing the athletes all the time. And as a 33-year-old, if I were to do that today, like if I were just to go into the gym and do a 5-minute warm-up and play a tournament, I would be unwell. I mean, I would probably have dislocations and sprained ankles, and I would be sore for a week. And that's just our expectation of these kids every single day. And I think part of that is just because they, as kids, are more resilient and can just bounce back up from injuries. And, you think about like somebody learning how to downhill ski for the first time. As a kid, you're a lot closer to the ground. So when you fall, it's not as big. But also, they can just bounce back up over and over again. But I've taught a few of my friends to ski as adults, and it's freaking hard because one big fall, and you're done for the rest of the day. Exactly.
Yeah, or you've just injured yourself and now you're out for the season and you can't do anything fun. I mean, we used to my family was big dirt bikers, and that was always my fear. Like, man, I have one bad crash and my summer's over. Like, I can do nothing else. And
Yeah, those can be brutal. Just trying to hold the motorcycle while you're riding it.
But what I'm realizing is just because they can doesn't mean they should.
yeah.
You know, I think building in rest is so important.
Good
And
message.
absolutely. Something that I really liked that I did with my team is every Monday, the first half of our practice, we would just do a chalk talk where we would, you know, watch a TED talk, or we would just have a group conversation about a specific topic. Or one day I taught them how to change a tire. I think
I
just
love that.
doing something where they were still together as a team, but we were kind of letting their bodies rest because they need to. You need to do that.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, and we were kind of talking earlier about, you know, this competitive D1 athletes and things like that, and talking about when you have, you maybe you have a superstar athlete and then they're way ahead. Say we're playing and it's 50-7, and they don't pull that athlete out. And I think sometimes people don't wonder why that gets pulled out or why it doesn't. And I think sometimes it's about the stats, and there's so much pressure to make this college team or to get the looks. And, you know, if the starter gets sat out at halftime because they are so far ahead and they want to give other people a chance to play, then they don't get their stats to look so good and compete against everybody else and beat the school record and all of these things. And I think, you know, then you're not getting the rest and the other people are not getting their chance to play. So it's all about perspective and what's really important in the long run, I think.
What do you think should happen with the kids that try super hard but don't ever get the playing time? Is it just fact of life and you just need to know to expect that?
I think it's a little bit of that, and there are plenty of other avenues that they can get the playing time. That's something that I was just thinking about when Renee was talking about that is, for example, between high school and club, I would say that club recruiters are going to be a much higher percentage. Like you're much more likely to get recruited from your club play than you are from your high school play.
Interesting.
And even if you're getting benched on your high school team, if you're not getting benched on your club team, then you're good. But I also think that college coaches know the game in and out. They have coached at every level most of the time. They understand the positions. They understand the subs. They are also making decisions when their team is way ahead that they're making cuts. And so I think that if your kid is on the bench, you can still get so much good film when they're in practice. You can get great film when they are playing. And so if you're benched, I think there are still plenty of avenues for you to be able to play at the college level. You just have to be a lot more creative about it. But there are a lot of programs that their number one goal is to get the kids on that team recruited. And so anybody that hasn't directly come to them and said, this is my goal, these are the coaches that are coming to watch me, this is what I need out of the season, anybody on the team that didn't do that can expect to spend a lot of time on the bench depending on the coach that they have. And unfortunately, that's just a harsh reality.
Yeah. I watched my nephew try. He is on 2 different types of sports teams. And I think one might be club, it's hockey, and the other one's football. So one is school and one's club.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You make a good point about film. You'll see a lot of these, the college athletes making, you know, they have an Instagram page and it shows their film and their highlight reels and stuff. And so it makes a way for people to be able to find them rather than just being there and watching it and whatever happens.
Yeah.
One other thing I thought of while we were discussing all of this is how it feels with the parent's identity when your kid doesn't make the team or they've moved out of sports and gone off to college, and all of a sudden you don't have those weekend games to go to anymore. I loved going to the lacrosse games. I kept the penalty clock, and when it was over, it was so sad.
I think that's a really good point. I think a lot of parents, their social life is wrapped up in it because it's all they've had time and money to do for so long.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's a valid point. And I think it's a good thing to remember while your kid is still in sports. And honestly, I've always wondered how parents with more than one kid do it because I feel like there's no way Lexi could have done 2 sports if we had more than one kid. I mean, just physically the driving them around, you couldn't have done it.
Yeah, I mean, so many of the parents that I talked to that had multiple kids, it's like mom is over at this tournament with this kid, dad is over at this tournament with this kid, and then they're going to switch halfway through the day, and then it's like
or they
pure
have to
chaos.
get ride from other players' parents.
Right. It's like your whole schedule and everything is fully tied up in your identity as a sports parent.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have felt that now that I'm taking a year off of coaching. I have been volunteering for a couple of the different volleyball programs in town so that I can still kind of have my foot in the door. But I texted my girlfriend because her daughter just started playing t-ball. She's 4 and just started playing t-ball. And I was like, will you please invite me to come to your daughter's t-ball game? So there are other ways to get those little feel goods as well.
Well, and I think that's something that small towns do super well. One of my Casa kiddo goes to school in Three Forks, and we went out there to watch her cheer the other night. And it's like, you don't have to have a kid on the football team to go watch the football games. Like, everybody goes to the football games. And my dad lived in Stamford, and that's how it was. The whole town went to the game and supported those kids. And I love that. And the way I grew up, I went to one football game in high school my entire career, and it was because our farm's hired man was on the opposing team. That was it. Like, it wasn't a thing for me, but I love how the small towns show up. And like you said, you can volunteer at different things. There's a lot of intramural sports in college anymore where there's no refs. It's not that competitive. And not even just in college. I think there's a lot of adult teams anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe not cheer, but
I play in a couple of adult volleyball leagues, and it's the best. It's so fun. But I think moral of the story is the whole big picture of sports today is crazy. It's so busy. There are such high expectations, and it can be really hard to manage both as the parent and as the athlete and as the coach. But remember why you're doing it. Remember why your kid is playing sports in the first place and what's really important and what character traits your kiddo can get from being a part of that team or that sport. There's so much that you can learn as a kid. And I really think there's so much that you can learn as a parent too, through watching your kid deal with hard things and learn something new and stumble through something that they haven't done before. I know that as a coach, I learned so much about myself. I mean, those girls taught me more than I could have ever taught myself. And I'm so thankful that I got to coach them for that very reason, because kids today are freaking resilient and they have a hard world to grow up in with all of the technology and all of the social media and trying to learn how to love yourself through all of that. I think it's just so important that sometimes they need a little extra love from us too throughout the process.
I think that's so well said. And I love what you said, that I love watching you play. I hope if you take away one thing from this, I wish I had known this, 9 years ago, 12 years ago, but that's such a great thing to say. And, just don't take yourself too seriously. Remember that most kids are not going to be D1 athletes. They're not going to play in the NFL, and that's okay. And they need to know that you're going to love them anyway and not tie it too much and check your ego at the door. So if this has been helpful for you, please share this with somebody else that's a sports parent, or maybe that doesn't have kids in sports yet. I always joke, people always tell me they're so excited when their kid's not in daycare anymore because they're going to save so much money. And I'm like, oh, no. You don't know about club sports.
Just wait until they start dancing or doing gymnastics or playing volleyball.
All of that daycare money is going to be reinvested in sports. So, if this could be helpful for a lot of parents, and of course, that is what we are trying to do. Hi, Wrigley. is add value to other people out there. So please please share. If you're not subscribed, please do. We want to reach as many people as possible. So stay tuned for our next episode.
Here's to empowering each other, one story at a time.